All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have an awesome guest to kick off the new year. He is a senior manager at KPMG, and during the COVID pandemic, decided to create a point system validating NHL players for the Hall of Fame. His site, Adjusted Hockey, has created the Pidutti Point System (PPS), which you hear a lot in this podcast. It puts NHLers on an even playing field, given their era, position, and a multitude of factors to determine their worthiness to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. Today, we'll dive deep into everything that goes into his calculations and chat about some of the Hall of Fame stubs that are still waiting for their entry. He himself is also an NHLer alumni, no big deal, backstopping the Sudbury Northern Wolves from 03 to 06. Please welcome Paul Pidutti to the BTB podcast. How's it going?
Great, guys. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm a big fan, so I know I was joking with you, Alex, but you guys should be really proud of this, that the product's awesome. You've kept it up for a long time, so I'm a big fan of you guys, and I'm excited to chat today.
Awesome. Oh, well, we appreciate that. And obviously we've turned into fans of your work too. Tom was going through the site and he was absolutely just stunned at everything.
I was having a field day. Field day.
Yeah. Tom's a big stat guy. But yeah, we'll dive into it. So, Paul, obviously on top of work now, you're getting the hockey press treatment, hopping on a lot of shows. And how busy have things been since you released the site?
It honestly just came out of nowhere. I had never sent a tweet or written an article in late October, and I kind of had the courage to put this product out there online, and it just blew up right away almost. And it was really flattering and humbling and exciting. But to answer your question, it's been busy. There's no question, because I work during the day, right? And I usually get up at 5:30 and I put in a couple hours on this project before I go to work, and maybe slip in the odd answer to a tweet during the day. But otherwise, I have to do this in my spare time. So that's been something.
Yeah, no doubt. It's crazy that it's kind of been like on the side of a full-time job, which I know you're busy with. It's crazy. One question before we go into the earlier days: has Kyle Davidson, obviously, great buddies, has he offered you a job yet? Because if not, like, Kyle, he's got to get on it.
Love that. No, he hasn't. It's actually funny though. The people that are working in hockey these days, they're actual data scientists, and this has been really awesome, but I am not a data scientist. Right? I'm an accountant and a weekend golf hacker, and as great as it's been, I don't think at this point I'm even qualified. But Kyle's been a big supporter, and I've appreciated his help a lot.
Awesome.
Let's go right from the start, Paul. We always go right back to the start of everyone's career. Like, what got you into hockey at first, and were there any sports that you played growing up besides hockey?
Yeah, sure thing. So I actually have more of a baseball family. So when I was really young, my dad had no real visions of us playing hockey. He just thought, it's kind of violent, expensive in arenas, and he loved baseball. And he kind of coached my brother and I all the way through. My brother played actually 2 years in the Jays minor league system as well. So he's a rare Sudbury baseball player who left Sudbury to play baseball. But that was kind of my upbringing. And then when I was, I think, 8 years old, I got a pretty late start to hockey. I played a year out of net, and I went in net. I think that's my first season there, that photo in the background. I think I was in maybe grade 4, and I just got hooked. And it was just to the point that, it was a great move. I'm glad my dad relented and put us in hockey, because, I have lifelong experiences from it, no question.
For sure. Goalie dad too. That's tough. Goalie dad's not easy.
Oh no, my brother was a pitcher, so my poor dad, he never could just relax, and just let you blend in. It's like, no, if they play bad, it's going to be a long car ride home.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh man.
Paul, did you always have a knack for stats? Like, what got you into like the analytical side of hockey? Like, I noticed on the Elite Prospects, and you can back me up if it's true, you were Scholastic Player of the Year in the Noj. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you got me. It was, yeah. Too funny.
What like got you involved with the analytical side with hockey? Some people just even when I was playing too, I always found a passion to me to always look up the stats. Like, what got you into it for yourself?
It was honestly, Tommy, a day one thing. Like when I was 9 years old, I would get a baseball glove and the NHL almanac, like, you know, that one that's like
Yeah.
1,000 pages. And
Yeah.
I was just a 9-year-old hauling that thing around. And I'm sure my parents were like, what is with this kid? But from day one, I always was trying to like measure who's the best player. And I was always curious in that type
Cool.
of thing. Finally, you know, I don't want to say finally with the lockdowns, but it did create a rare opportunity where I could sort of dive into this lifelong project I just wanted to do. And who has the time to put in a few thousand hours on something, right? Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. Unreal. And obviously also you spent some time in the NOJHL. How did you find yourself on the Northern Wolves?
You know, I just kind of chipped away at it. Like I got a late start in hockey, and I was never on an OHL trajectory or anything like that. Like I was a solid Bantam midget AAA goalie, but I kind of found a gear a bit when I was probably about 17, and I don't know if I was a late bloomer, but you know, I was never destined to be in the NHL, and I knew that. And I had a great time playing junior A. We had an awesome group. When I was 19 turning 20, we won the league in our last year, and that was a huge thrill. And that's pretty much when I had shut it down. So I haven't been on the ice since, if you could believe that. I sold the gear immediately after. I haven't made a save in 17 years here. So
yeah. Oh wow, cool.
I find a trend though, because we have one of our close buddies too, Paul, who just got out of hockey too, and he was a goalie, and they get rid of their gear right away. Was there a reason for that? You just didn't want to put him back on?
I don't know. I just like the thought of playing a men's league, like you get the worst ice times and you just get peppered. And, you know, when I played, I was pretty serious. Like I wasn't the guy who just like went there to goof off. And the idea of men's league, I knew it wasn't for me, and I didn't want anyone to convince me, you know, play a tournament, this and that. And goalies are in demand. So I basically just disappeared
into the golf game full time. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's dive in. Jamil mentioned in the intro, adjusted hockey, Paul, and the PPS system. Like, how did it all start, and what made you want to pursue this? You mentioned earlier, obviously, when COVID hit, but run us through basically what brought you to this idea.
Yeah, sure. So there is a very big online industry about the Baseball Hall of Fame. And it's a really big deal. And not to say the Hockey Hall of Fame is, but people don't talk about it nearly enough. So part of it was me seeing an opportunity where I couldn't figure out why nobody was talking about it more. And I almost wanted to create the market, if that makes sense. Not that I'm making money out of this just yet, but when I say market, I just a place for people to talk about talk about it. And I figured if I could be the first person to get out there and do it justice and actually have a sensible approach to it that people can get behind. And oddly enough, right away, like the output, the single number really resonates with people, because people don't care about all the inputs. You know, that's just not the society we live in. People want to know, like, what's the number and how does that compare to other people? And I kind of got that right away. I didn't want to be a stats person who was just complicating and muddying things. I wanted it to be like something that anyone can just attach themselves to. And I think that's why it got off to a good start anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. You're absolutely right. At the end of the day, everyone's looking for that end result and seeing how it compares. And you laid it out clearly for sure in the player cards, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So you did this on top of work, like we mentioned, and you said over 2,000 hours, which is, I mean, insane. So when you were in the thick of it, was it like something you'd pick up when you had time, or did you have like a set schedule when you were going to work on it?
Oh, that's a good question. At first, it was just when I had free time and I didn't really know what I had, right? You can just picture I just start with a blank slate in every player, and I'm just trying to find like some combination that spits something out that people can get behind. So it was just like whenever. It was more of a hobby at first. And then at some point in 2022, I could feel I was getting close to the finish line, and I was kind of like, okay, I need to formalize this. Like, what is it? And that's when I sort of came out with okay, I need a website. This needs to reside
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. And I need to do more work on the site to get all the information out there. That's probably a future step. But this year, I just kind of in the summer, even though lockdowns were winding down, I just got into it. And every free second I had, I put towards this because I wanted it to be out in the fall for Hockey Hall of Fame season.
Yeah.
People talk about it twice a year, right? They talk about it October into November when they have the induction, and then again in the spring when they say who's going to be inducted. So
Right.
that's sort of like I was trying to peak at the right time, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it was perfect timing for sure. I think it was like what, a week right before they did the Hall of Fame ceremony, right?
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. Yeah, that's wild. How many combinations of like the formula did you have before you settled on the one you went with?
I have a lot of Excels on my desktop that have probably like version 37. Like I just kept tweaking it and massaging it and just saying like what after doing all the research, like what represents a player's career best. And there's no right answer for that, right, guys? It's like you could come up with a formula tomorrow that maybe you think is better. It's just mine's kind of passed the sniff test with people, I guess.
For sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Paul, where did you start when creating PPS? There are so many factors in your system, obviously. Like, what was the starting point for you, would you say?
So there's something out there called JAWS in baseball, and I don't know if in any of your research you saw it, but it's like the Baseball Hall of Fame metric, and it's quite a bit simpler than mine. I tried at first to replicate that, to be perfectly honest with you, but I realized that it's not the same type of information out there, and hockey fans value other things more, like playoffs and awards, and the baseball version doesn't do that. So I knew I had to make it a little bit more robust, and that's what kind of sent me down that rabbit hole. But baseball and JAWS, as it's called, was a bit of an inspiration or starting point.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting that no one's ever like really done something for hockey, and like you said, you found the opportunity. That's wicked. So let's break it down. So obviously, going through your website, it starts with eras and position. How did you find the breakdown of the 5 eras to be the most appropriate one?
Great question. Yeah, you guys do your homework.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm not surprised, but yeah, that's a good question. I was trying to find similar splits in eras. So you had like the original 6 sort of stands alone because it's that been 26 years, and then that left 25 years before where the NHL was kind of just finding its identity, and expansion kind of led to one thing. And in the mid 90s I called that the modern era, and then I've done another split. It hasn't mattered yet, but I've called like the post-COVID era. Those players, like no one's really talking about them for the Hall of Fame like yet, because it's the Cale Makars or guys that are in year 5 of their career. But yeah.
Okay, cool.
One question I had about I saw on the site. So you mentioned in the write-up like the Jack Hughes part where it says the COVID era. Paul, do you think there's gonna be a name for that era, or is it actually gonna be like, I kind of like the ring to COVID era because everyone knows around that time there was no fans in the building, etc. Like, or do you think there's gonna be a different name?
I don't know. I hope so, because it's just kind of such like a an ugly name, right? That's the starting point was 3 years ago, and what's been dominating the world. I hope there's something more exciting to talk about in the current quarter century than COVID, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah. No doubt, I could see it even being like the McDavid Bedard era or something like that. You never know. I love it.
Trademark it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Next question I got for you, Paul. Like, this is, to me, Chimino mentioned before, like I love the stat stuff and going through your website. What you have done is just magnificent to me. But the next one I got for you is obviously like, take us through the factors for like the PPS. Like, which one would you say is your favorite, or which one would you say you found like the most unique?
Sure. Thanks for the compliment, Tommy.
No problem.
The part that I think brought the whole system together and that I love, it's the peak, because what it does is you could just take like, what happens is when people measure careers, they take like career, and then guys like Patrick Marleau look really, really good because they played forever. And then guys like Eric Lindros, who didn't play that long, don't look as good because he was better than everyone, but not for very long. And so what the peak does is it takes someone's 7 best years and assigns a score to it. And that's sort of what made this work the best, I think, because you have your career, that's like the sum of everything. You have your pace, which is how efficient you were, but it's that peak that makes the Pavel Bure's and the Peter Forsbergs and the guys who were really good for a long time that weren't just, 35 on the third line banking points and then they climb up the scoring leader. But does that really make your career better? I mean, to me, it probably doesn't. So peak to me is the exciting one. Like, what was someone at their absolute best? And that's a cool thing for me.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know it's your all-time leader is Bobby Orr, and honestly, not as surprised you talk about guys that had a short season, right? Who knows what could have been if there's the technology for his knees back then. But yeah, no, that's interesting. And on the player card, I guess, is the high noon a part of that peak? Because I know I noticed you use that term as well.
Yeah, so the High Noon, I named it after Larkel's my favorite
Yeah,
band. One of their
yeah,
albums.
unreal.
Maybe you guys picked up on that. I wasn't sure. The idea was like if you're talking about someone's Hall of Fame career, and I used Patrick Marleau earlier, so let's run with him. Like he was never the top guy in the league, and I think when you're having a Hall of Fame debate, you should probably have been one of the best players at your position for an extended period of time. So separate from PPS, I have this high noon number out there, and that is on your best. It's a 3-year rolling average, but at your best, what was your standing in the NHL? So were you the number 1 player? Were you the 10th? Were you the 30th? And I think that matters because if you're the 30th best player at your peak, you probably don't belong in the Hall of Fame. So that's what high noon is. It's where you stood at your best.
Okay, cool, interesting. And the Hall of Fame standard for PPS is 235. Right?
For
Is that
forwards. For
forwards?
Okay.
Yeah. Defensemen and goalies have a different bar, basically.
For sure. Yeah, no, makes sense. And I guess how did you land on that number for all different positions?
So there are, and I have a whiteboard up in my room here. I've always had it up. And so there are 61 post-expansion forwards. So the 61st best guy in PPS is where the standard is. It doesn't mean those are the guys in the Hall of Fame, but the number of guys who qualify for my Hall of Fame match what's in the Hall of Fame. So that's where I came up with that.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Yeah, no, I love that. And so in your system too, it is more NHL based. A lot of people in the Hall of Fame do value international play, and people can have a debate on that as well. Do you see that fitting in at some point? Did you try to fit it in the system as well, or could it be another branch of adjusted hockey based on international career?
Yeah, no, great question. It's more, my measure is more of an NHL measure, and what it's missing is they do factor in junior hockey, world championships, things like that. And I don't go there only because it's almost impossible to assign a decent number to that. And I would have been working on it for another 2 years, honestly. It's just too much. So I had to draw some lines somewhere. I always say though that this is a starting point. Like I'm not that person who will talk to someone and be like, you're too above this standard that I made, so you're in or you're out. It has to be, you have to talk about intangibles. You have to talk about things I'm not measuring. And it's always been important to me not to be like that egghead guy who's just telling everyone, oh, according to my calculations. Like I don't want to go there. I think it's important to like listen to other people and to have their input and to consider intangibles and things like that. So that's been a big part of what I'm trying to do. Is I'm just creating a conversation, and this is a starting point.
No, absolutely. And already we could see where things could grow, right? Which is really cool. Tom?
Yeah. Let's move into the player cards, Paul. Like, how did you come up with the graphic and the designs for the PPS player cards?
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm an accountant, as you guys said, and in the last couple of years, like this has been such a good personal development project for me because I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not a data engineer, I'm not a writer, and I've had to be, and I've just done a lot of trial and error. Like there are some cards out there with modern players, and I didn't really want to just rip them off or anything like that. So I tried to make it unique, but I honestly had so many versions of what the final product was. And even now I look at it, I'm like, I want to tweak something, but it's like, don't really have the time, unfortunately. But it's trial and error. Like I've been really quietly slugging away at this for longer than anyone would probably understand, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I still managed to be a mediocre 13 handicap golfer. So yeah, I don't know how I've been able to do it all, you know.
No, I honestly, I don't know. I don't know either.
No, I'm kidding around. I'm kidding around.
No, it's impressive. And for your player cards, do you have one? Like, did you make one for every player, or like, or you just punch it in when you see fit?
He made one for himself, and then he followed that one.
There you go. Yeah.
Mine is worth 0. So. Well, no. So what I have to do is I have to grab the photo and the logo, and otherwise all the data populates. So it takes me about 1 minute to do one.
Wow.
My next sort of phase here is to create a searchable database online so that, you know, if Tommy likes Steve Yzerman, he can just go and grab the card. And at any point, it's just I have to figure out how to do that. One, on the data side, and 2, does this have monetizable features? Like, how do I do this? I don't want to just dump it on the internet for free right now because there's enough interest in it. I'm not looking to get rich or something like that. It's just I have to figure out where this data's places sort of in the hockey world and what to do with it. So that's sort of my 2023 goals now that I can quiet down a bit with some of the Hall of Fame stuff kind of quieting. So yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. There's definitely the opportunity for monetization is definitely there. No one's doing this type of thing, which is wicked. And yeah, and you answered our next question was if there was going to be a site for people to search players. So that checks that off. That's perfect. Now let's dive into some players here. Obviously, the big one, we've sent you a list, but the big one everyone's talking about is Alex McGillney, obviously, who's been snubbed for a while now, and people are having a hard time figuring out why. What's your take on him using the PPS?
So I called him, I think, in a tweet the other day, the most glaring omission from the Hockey Hall of Fame.
I saw that.
Yeah. So and he is, and there's a statistical side of which he's easily qualified. It must have it here somewhere. He's the standard's 235 and he is 274. So he kind of blows it away on the numbers. And he also defected from the Soviet Union in the late 80s, and that created like a floodgate of Europeans getting to play in North America, and that was a really risky thing at the time. So that part as well, on top of already having a statistical case, it's kind of mind-blowing. A lot of people think that he's kind of a weird dude and he always shunned away from the spotlight and that he might not even embrace being inducted, and a lot of people think that may be why he hasn't been inducted, because he's not a good sell. So interesting and spicy take there, but
yeah, no, that is interesting. You think on just merit, like his action alone, and his career alone, you know, and definitely, like you said, kind of pioneering Russian hockey in North America. That's interesting. The next player or goalie we'll go into, and I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know, like, I think on international success he'll get in, but if you look at NHL wise, it'd be pretty close. I think would be Carey Price, who's had 2 cup runs. One where he really wasn't in net for, and obviously 2021. So where does Carey Price fall on PPS?
He's a great case, and I'm glad that you guys came up with him. And I'm sure you're a fan based on your hat, Alex. But,
yeah.
He is like statistically borderline. So 317 is the goalie standard for his era, and he's 318.
Oh,
but
wow.
I really do think he's going to get in for a couple of reasons. The Hall of Fame's been so stingy. Like in your lifetime, the only people who have been in are Hasek, Brodeur, Balfour, Waugh, and Luongo.
Yeah.
And so they don't let anybody in. But Price, like he just was the guy for, call it even 3 years. Like when he was on Team Canada, he won MVP, which goalies don't usually do. I just think his peak and his reputation as the top guy for so long, even though the stats are borderline, I think he's going to get in would be my thought. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think internationally for sure, um, with the World Juniors, World
I
Cup,
always, yeah,
Olympics, like
I agree. I always like thought of him the same, or maybe a little bit less than Luongo. Like I can't see them. They were never
yeah,
much different, in my opinion. I don't know.
I'd also
Oh no, go ahead,
yeah,
Alex.
yeah. I think it'd be interesting to see like where he kind of compares with like a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, who's won a ton of cups, like, but internationally wasn't like the guy, right? He kind of got outshunned by, but Price, but strictly NHL wise, like you got to me, I would say Fleury's got to get in, but I don't know. What's your take?
Mm-hmm.
He's within one, I think, in my system. So it shows
Crazy.
how often it was. Like Fleury played longer. He was never as good as Pete Carey Price, but he, arguably has done it for longer. Well, he has done it for longer and had a little more team success. So it's funny that that's like the exciting part about the system is like you just drop a name and then you go, oh, well, two guys I think are similar and they're
Yeah.
within one. And that's what's good about it. Luongo actually blows them both out of the water because,
Really?
yeah, and I don't think his reputation for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just because he's a guy who didn't take himself seriously or played
Yeah.
on some bad teams for a while there, but he scores really, really well. And if you look at his save percentage, like he's next level.
Yeah.
But it depends what matters to you too. It's not just what I say, of course.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. No, it's interesting debates for sure. Yeah, Tom.
One person I want to ask about, because obviously me and Alex being hockey coaches, is Rod Brendamore. He spent, over 1,400 games as a player, but now he's spent the last 10 years assistant coach and obviously head coach now with Carolina. Like, where do you see him lining up? I know, playing and coaching totally different, but me alone, that resume just adds up for him to get inducted. But
yeah, it's a great case. His hockey as a player case is light. I
yeah,
think he gets brought up a lot, and I'm probably not going to make any friends, as I always say, like he's always way below the standard or whatever. And let's be honest, Rod could take us all out in probably one drop. But he's become kind of beloved because he's a great coach. He's an intense guy. Right? He's a lot of fun, and I think it would be a good thing if he did get in. The way that the Hall of Fame has their categories, there's no real way to blend the two. And I wonder if that's something that might evolve over time or if they just sort of do it quietly without ever announcing it. Like he's close as a player, probably not there. But if he wins a cup and, has a Jack Adams trophy for top coach, it's like they need to start, I think, considering someone's hockey life and not necessarily just one or the other. So I think you're onto something there.
I agree.
Cool. Who's another guy here? Yeah. Okay. I'm more of a polarizing like figure. Like he was he was an absolute show. Was Jeremy Roenick? Like where does he sit on your system?
He's qualified actually.
Yeah.
He does quite well. He seems to be overlooked, and I'm not sure if that he didn't get any award love. He never did win the cup. He wasn't on that Team USA that won the World Cup in '96 that sort of blew up USA hockey. I do think his window's probably passed, and you guys are probably familiar. He got turfed due to some inappropriate comments when he worked
for sure
in media, and I think like he was probably so borderline that might be sort of the death blow on his case. I could be wrong. Like by the numbers, I have him qualified, but I don't see him sailing in. If I'm being honest,
for sure. No, that's a great point. Two more here. So obviously, another big name, who probably didn't have the best NHL career, like in terms of stats, but obviously scored one of the biggest goals in Canadian hockey history is Paul Henderson. I'm interested to see, where does he kind of stand with you?
Well, his player case is really weak.
Yeah.
Like I think he's about a 50-point player. like average per 82 games in his own era. I tend to lean no, and it probably makes me seem un-Canadian or something like that because I know he is polarizing. But the problem is like, and I knew you guys are going to ask, so I looked it up. He is basically Brendan Gallagher if Brendan Gallagher scored the golden goal instead of Crosby. And you guys are that's someone you guys are both familiar with in your
Yeah,
own time. And it's like, would you put Gallagher in the Hall of Fame if he scored at Vancouver? And
yeah,
it's tough. And I know that it's been 50 years, and that may have been even more significant than
Right.
Crosby's goal. But it's just like it's so hard to get him there. And the 72 team has their own section of the Hall of Fame. They have a statue.
right,
It's like they've been honored. So
right.
as much as it kills me to say, like, I'm okay if he doesn't get in. It's not a
Yeah,
tragedy if he does, but it's not just
yeah,
my.
no,
How about you
definitely
guys?
no, it
What,
makes sense. Yeah, no, I agree. And honestly, like we only know, right, Paul Henderson for that one goal, right? No one ever
Exactly.
talks about his
Yeah.
NHL career because there wasn't much to it, right? Like you said, like a Brendan Gallagher, which is a fantastic comparison. I never thought of it that way, which is it puts it into good perspective, for sure. One more person we got to do it because Mason Savage is our producer of the podcast. Where does Brian Savage sit? I know like he has one of the craziest stories coming up in hockey, but how's his NHL career look?
Yeah, I love the local angle. I'm glad you guys asked. So I do a lot of stuff where I adjust for era. So it's like in any neutral era. So he didn't have a long career, but he was the equivalent of 26 goals per 82 games, which actually when I looked that up was way better than I was expecting. Like that's a solid player, no question. His PPS is 114. So I mean, I don't think you were asking me because you thought he'd be in the Hall of Fame. I think he's happy probably being in the Sudbury Hall of Fame. But I came up with a couple like modern comps just to put him in context.
Yes, I love this.
Yeah, it was Kevin Hayes and Jason Zucker. So
Okay.
like those are good respected guys. They're not going in the Hall of Fame, but just kind of that's what I try to do a lot based on who I'm talking to. It's like the younger you are an active player, the older you are.
Comparisons.
Yeah. So my system's able to do that, which is a cool thing because then I can, when I'm trying to make a case on someone positively, negatively, whatever, I say, well, they're like person X, and then it tends to resonate. So yeah, it's cool. Great career, but I don't think he's going to the Hall of Fame. I'm sure he's okay with it.
No doubt. No, it's so interesting. Like it is like it's so hard to get into the Hall of Fame. Like like making the NHL is one thing. To be a Hall of Famer is like you have to be on another level, which is really really interesting. I'm just people are coming to the top of my head here. Sorry, Paul, if I put you on the spot. But another one I remember Chicklets was all over. Tom was Guy Carbonneau, who they didn't think was worthy over a guy like McGillney. What's your thoughts on him?
Carbonneau rates so poorly. Like I've generally tried to, like, even my Twitter content, I try not to like highlight the glaring mistakes in the Hall of Fame because it just does no good. But he's, his case is exclusively that he won a few cups and he had the reputation as the top defensive player, and those are tough, right? It's like being like a closer in baseball. It's like you don't play that much, but you're a specialist, and does that warrant your inclusion? I mean, Guy Carbonneau is a stretch for me, and I don't necessarily think he strengthened the Hall of Fame, but yeah, just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%, especially with guys that are off the board, like we've talked about for sure. One more, and then we'll keep going. I love this. Mike Foligno. I'm going with the local trend here. How does Mike score on PPS?
I have to look him up, but you guys can do that while we're talking here. What's a really interesting thing? When you look at career totals, there's a huge gap between Mike and Nick. And one of the things that I do is I neutralize for error, right? I use like some of the data that's out there. And when it comes to career points, at the exact same point in their career a couple of years ago when I did this, they were a handful of points difference. And I think Mike has the reputation as being way more of a scorer, but he played in the 80s when goals were flying, right? And Nick played post lockout where there's like under 6 goals a game. And that's they were almost like an inspiration where you look at the two generations and you say they were way closer in offensive ability than you'd ever think. Mike still has the edge, but it's pretty tight. I'll look up.
That's wicked.
Yeah, and that's the type of like eye-opening things where, you know, people say, "Oh, you hit 40 goals." It's like, well, in the 80s, like dozens of guys were hitting 40 goals.
Yeah,
if you do it now, a handful are. So that's part of what I'm trying to do. So Mike is 134 on PPS.
Okay,
gotcha. Okay, cool. Interesting. And like you said, for errors, like obviously adjusting is crazy. Like even like way back in the day, like we're talking like wartime. Like do you adjust when like people had to go to war and stuff like that?
Yeah, like it's out there. And so back then they only had 14 skaters, say. So
that's crazy.
Instead of an 18. So if you have a big point total, it's like, well, a forward was probably playing 30 minutes, right? Maybe more. So there are adjustments for things like that. I didn't come up with some of those concepts. I don't want to take credit for it, but I'm trying to bring a lot of them to the mainstream in a way that people will understand. But yeah, those are like real adjustments, no question.
Yeah, cool.
Now I gotta skip to some general questions for you, Paul. Like we mentioned this whole basically interview, how busy you are with this and work, and like you mentioned golf in the summer. Like, do you watch a lot of hockey when you can, or are you an avid fan? Who's your favorite team? Run me through
I do
all those questions.
Yeah, I do. I do still watch a lot of hockey. I get Sportsnet now. I guess I used to be Game Center, and I just like blast through games in 30, 40 minutes, like before I go to bed. And I watch a lot of Leafs and I watch a lot of Penguins because I'm a huge Crosby guy.
Nice.
So that's what I probably 90% of the games I watch are Leafs and Penguins. Yeah, but I definitely do watch a lot. I'd never want to be one of those guys who people accuse of, you know, not being a real fan. I definitely live and breathe it, no question.
Cool. Yeah. No, that's wicked. And you mentioned Crosby, and there's always the Crosby Ovi thing. I know I saw that on your site as well. Do you think Ovi reaches Gretzky's goal total?
Yeah, I do. I think it's just a formality, unless like barring absolute disaster. I think I can't see why he wouldn't. I kind of hope he doesn't, because I'm a big Crosby guy, and for lots of reasons not an Ovechkin guy, but I do think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Cool. I think that organization cares more about Ovi breaking the record than them actually winning.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Like,
now.
Yeah, it's good for business and probably overlooking a few things in the process, but I won't go there.
Exactly. We mentioned like you obviously played goalie, Paul. Like, do you have a favorite goalie now that you like to watch? I mentioned, or in your website, I saw it was Shesterkin that was featured as well. Like, is there anyone that's intriguing to you?
I grew up a Potvin guy.
Okay.
The 90s Potvin guy, that was my guy. And then I morphed into a Cujo guy I'm kind of using my platform to pitch for Cujo in the Hall of Fame, because Lundqvist is going to sail in, and Cujo basically has the exact same case. Not exact, but it's really close. So any media I've gotten to do, the first thing I've said is like, hey, give me a chance to talk about Cujo.
I love it.
Fame, I'll do it, because, you know, if I'm the only or one of the few people like really that's trying to have an expertise in this, may as well go for someone I think deserves it. Today, I couldn't say that there's a guy right now that I just follow really closely.
Okay.
Not necessarily. No, I couldn't say that there was one.
Okay, cool. Talking about the future, I guess, of adjusted hockey, like you mentioned, obviously searchable database, monetization, and you mentioned your goals. I guess what long term, where do you see this thing going?
The truth is, I don't even want to guess anymore, because I put that out I've only been at this 2 months, and like to think that I've got to talk to the people I have and the opportunities that have come from it kind of have blown my mind. So I don't want to necessarily speculate, but I think like a legitimate goal, and whether or not I ever make a dollar out of this, is not important to me. If I can influence actual future decisions,
That'd be
and
cool.
my
Cool.
stat becomes a talking point that becomes part of the mainstream, it's sort of crept just barely into it. But if mainstream people are referencing it and actually have some influence on who gets elected, to me, that is probably the long-term goal out of this. Like, it's not a selfish thing. It's just, I want to have be an objective voice that improves the standard. So we'll see. We'll see, guys.
Yeah, no doubt. It's gonna be really cool to see. I think next year, now that everyone's familiar, you're gonna see it being referenced a ton. I think, like, again, there is no other metric like PPS that's being used for Hockey Hall of Fame, which is gonna be so cool to see. And I guess going into that, like, who do you see if based on your system, like, who do you have getting elected into the Hall of Fame next round?
Well, there's who I have and who I think will, and
Yeah.
I try to just focus on who I want to, and I think Lundqvist is the only first ballot guy who's going to get in or should get in. I would say, like, the next best guy is like a Justin Williams or Brent Seabrook, and to me, they're not really close.
Mhm.
So you've got Lundqvist. I do think they're going to correct the McGillney issue soon, but it's a very complicated thing to celebrate a Russian today, and I would understand if they skip that personally. The other Cujo I'd like to see in, and there's a couple other pet projects I have, and one is John LeClair, who's a bit surprising. But if you look at his peak in the absolute dead puck era, when you go on his hockey reference page, you'll probably blow your mind how dominant he was for a while. So he's a project of mine too.
Cool.
He followed me on Twitter, which kind of, someone must have tipped him off that I'm trying to get him going, and I was like, wow. So that's one of the things those are some of the players that I think are going to get in 2023.
Cool. I like that. Unreal. All right. Before we let you go, Paul, we'll go into our Fast Five. Now we call it Fast Six because there's two questions that we always ask, and we're adding it in now, barring some debate that we've had over past podcasts. But so it'll be 6 rapid fire questions. Whatever comes to the top of your head, let it rip, and I'll send it off to Tom.
Okay. Your favorite NOJHL rink you played in?
Oh, Iroquois Falls, Abitibi.
Nice.
Yeah. Have you guys been?
No.
Yeah. Are they even still in the league?
I don't think Abitibi is.
No.
They're both not. Yeah, no, they're both not in. Yeah.
Awesome rink, like, where they fill it and it's like small, so you see everybody. That was like a thrill to play there, of all places. Yeah.
That's wicked.
Whenever you have time, what's the dream travel destination?
We went to California this summer, and I have to say that's hard to beat. San Francisco and San Diego, and my wife and I loved it. And if you could ever get there, or if you have already, but I recommend.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Will Connor Bedard be better than Connor McDavid?
I always say no in these debates because I just think so much has to go right. Like, I think he's just as talented. It's just like Crosby almost didn't play past his mid-20s, right? You look at dots like Merrill Lemieux, all this issues. So yeah, these are supposed to be rapid, so I'll stop talking. But I'll say
true.
I'll say no.
What's your favorite fruit?
Oh, I'm a blueberry guy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
off the board, yeah.
Okay. Will the Toronto Maple Leafs win a playoff series this year?
Yes, and I think they should have last year.
I agree.
I'm a Leafs guy, but they were just as good as Tampa.
I agree.
It's just a matter of time, really, I think. I'm a huge fan of rolling it back. Like, you look at the Washingtons and you look at the teams that everyone wanted to break them up. It's like, if you have the best players and you're one of the best regular season teams, it's just a matter of time. Just be more patient, Leaf Nation. You heard it from me.
Yeah, no, it's so true. You look at Tampa; they did the same thing. And on the flip side, a team that's kind of panicked. Yeah, Colorado, a team. on the flip side, that's kind of blown up is Florida, and who knows if they'll ever get back to the level they're at. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it is a good take for sure.
You break guys up and then you spend 10 years looking for Nylander, looking for Marner.
Yeah.
It's like just they're good.
Here.
They're really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Last one we ask everybody, Paul, what's your favorite Sudbury restaurant?
Pat Mario's.
Yeah.
Stock.
My friends, the group chat I'm in, my buddies Roast Central, they literally roast me because they say that my wife and I go there way too often and it can't be beat, and it's near my house. So
Oh, there you go. Perfect story. I love it. Awesome. Well, listen, Paul, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and chatting with us about this. I feel like it won't be the last time we have you on. We'll probably get you back on. It'd be cool to chat about the next round of Hall of Fame and stuff like that, because we could go on forever. But for now, thanks so much for coming on. We'll be obviously cheering you on and watching this thing grow before our eyes. So again, thanks so much for coming on, investing your time in us, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. I wasn't just blowing smoke either. Like, I think I really love what you guys are doing. Can't say enough good things, and I could talk to you guys all day. So would love to come back sometimes and quite honestly, keep it up. It's great.
Appreciate it. Thank you.